Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, or morning, or evening, wherever you are. I'm one of the co-founders of the Intern Group, and here at the Intern Group, we help you realize your potential through international internship programs. We offer remote, hybrid, and in-person opportunities to talent across the world. We invite you to take a look at the website. You can find out different internship programs and offerings that we have. Feel free to send in an application and you can chat with any of our admissions consultants. My colleague Manami is going to put the link. Thank you, Manami. So let's start off with our speakers. Safina Ali, PhD and Assistant Professor at NYU, and Andres Salazar Gomez, PhD and Research Scientist in MIT. Let's do a really quick kind of round of intros. Safina, tell us about you and also how did you end up in the world of AI?
First of all, hey everyone, thank you for coming in from all the different time zones. I know it's like really late or early in some time zones, so thank you for making it here. My name is Safina. I am an assistant professor at New York University, NYU for short. I just finished my PhD at MIT last year and joined here as a faculty job. My work is about creative AI. So I make like machine learning algorithms that people can create with. So like art making algorithms, co-creative algorithms, like visual art sort of algorithms. And I work with kids. So I have kids and robots, like social robots, co-creating together. So they'll be making like stories together, they'll be making art together. And then besides that, I also work with K-12 students and sometimes undergrad students as well in AI literacy. So I develop AI curriculum for students and their teachers, which like focus on what they need to know about AI, because, you know, like now AI is everywhere and like we use it so much in our learning, in our jobs. So we make like learning materials, learning tools, and learning games that focus on AI as well. I ended up here so we were just talking about this in like a very weird winded like path. I was actually a designer. So I used to do like graphic design and like visual, some like visual art. I have a bunch of my artwork over here. So I used to do that. And then from there, I transitioned into HCI. I used to really like the field of HCI because there was so much like human psychology involved there and like studying how people interact with their computers, right? So I was doing that. As part of that, like I wanted to upscale a little bit more and like, you know, learn about like get my technical skills really in there. So I did a master's in computer science. And while I was doing that, I took this like robotics course for fun. And it was really good. I was like, this is so fun, right? But I didn't think too much about it. I'm like, this is really fun. But like, you know, robots are a little bit like infeasible for the real world right now. Like they're so big, so complex, and like we don't really like see them being applied in the real world that much. But I always like had that in my mind. I'm like, oh, I want to like go back to that. Then I started working in the industry as a user experience designer. And that was really fun. Like I could gain like a lot of technical skills. Like I could apply my work to like real product that we were shipping. But after a few years of like doing that job, I was a little bit bored. And like I was still like thinking about robots. And I'm like, oh, it'd be so cool to like study robots, research them. And then I found this lab at MIT's like Media Lab where they make these robots for early childhood learning. So they make robots that kids can like work with and learn with, and they actually deploy these robots at scale in real schools. So I'm like, okay, this is actually possible to do. So I contacted this lab and I was like, I'm super interested in working, and like I have all these like game design skills and like human computer interaction skills. And it kind of like worked out. And then I became a roboticist from there. And then I started making these robots that like help kids learn. And then while we were making these robots, we also learned that children, especially younger children, have a lot of misconceptions about how AI works. Like they wouldn't know where the data sets come from. They wouldn't know that AI can sometimes be wrong. So we also started to like make these learning materials to help them learn about AI while they're interacting with AI. So I'd say like a lot of my work is like algorithmic, and then the other half is like learning sciences and seeing how kids learn about AI as well. And yeah.
Fascinating journey, Safina, very impressive. How about you, Andres?
Hello, everybody. I was not expecting having to tell the whole story about where you are, but I'm a research scientist. So basically, what I do most of the time is research in education. extremely focused on AI as well. Actually, Safina and I know each other from MIT, from part of her path there. I'm there. Most of my research is focused on neuroscience and education. So one big part of it is how to make a lot of knowledge that is implicit, knowledge that we cannot communicate verbally. How do we extract that and make it explicit? So implicit knowledge into explicit knowledge. And that's a lot of body of work that we're doing in that field, because that is sort of what the skills that currently AI is not able to replicate. And hopefully we'll find ways to keep those skills with humans, and maybe AI can help us with some of that. But that's part of a big piece of the research that I've been doing. And in parallel, as Afina mentioned, I also work in the lab that she was part of on the AI literacy part, like how do children and undergrads K-12 in general learn about AI, how to use AI, and how to apply AI to learn other skills. So that's also a good piece of my work. Now, how I got here, I'm Colombian. I studied biomedical engineering, which is it was more focused on rehabilitation. I was always attracted by the idea of hand prosthesis or prosthesis of the feet. But I realized how important communication is, and that kind of drove me into research in that field. And I got an opportunity to go to the US to do something completely different in neuroscience and anesthesia and learn what speech prostheses were. And that means people that cannot communicate, cannot verbalize, cannot iterate, like say anything. They're locked in, they're like inside their bodies and they cannot say anything. Something like Stephen Hawking without his speaking machine. And that got me working in that field, in that domain of neuroscience. Computational neuroscience is what I ended up studying. I'm working in brain-computer interfaces. So basically how to extract the activity in the brain and translate that into, in this case, words, or what the person's intention is. But that connection of neuroscience led me into a center of research that is of science of learning, which is now what I basically apply on my day-to-day activities, because the neuroscience of how our brains learn is the best approach to propose pedagogies, methodologies to teach children and adults how to learn. And that's kind of the pipeline that led me to be right now part of open learning that is very focused on this idea of teaching everybody in the world, and also part of RACE, that is the initiative where um, Safina was part of that. I'm currently also participating in.
Extremely impressive. Thank you, Andres. And so, well, everyone who's here, or most people that are here, probably just about to start their professional careers and just wondering, okay, well, is AI a threat to me, right? Because, oh, how can I leverage AI for my career? So let's start maybe with you, Safina. What are some creative or unexpected ways that you have seen AI being used to solve problems and to enhance people's performance?
Yeah, so I think like the first part of your question, right? Like I would not be afraid of AI or for that matter, any new technology, right? Like you all are so early in your career, like you'll see a lot of these waves happen. Like right now, we're in an AI hype cycle and there'll be something else and something else after that. So these things keep changing, where they're tools that like help you do your work. AI is one that does impact our work a lot. Because there's a lot of things that you can animate, that you can make quicker, like a lot of occupations such as like writing or like art making, even like management, they are getting impacted a lot. What I would advise is like upskill with AI, like the at the very least what you all already do is like use tools to make your workflow easier. Like if you want to organize your email, if you want to organize your writing, you want to like organize your responding to people, organize your documents, how you're communicating, what you're communicating. Those are like the baseline things. But I would say also learn about AI, like, try to be updated on like newsletters, like what new things are happening, what new applications out there. So you'd be like a little bit ahead of the curve in knowing how to best leverage these technologies. I've seen them used, like the most recent fun thing that I was seeing was I've seen dancers were using AI and like they were recording all of their dances, and over time they were analyzing how their choreography is evolving, and kind of like algorithmically trying to figure out what are the things that audiences best respond to. I thought that was like a really fun application. Yes, just yesterday someone was telling me like they made like bots for their email to like respond automatically to like the email that's like less important to them. So that was a cool application. Then I've seen people, teachers use it for lesson planning a lot. So they have their own curriculum, they have their own lesson, but they are having to teach it to like a new audience every time. So they keep adapting it using AI. Then around me, I see roboticists use it like all the time, right? So back in the day, a lot of robotics work used to be like hard coded, like we hard code what the robot has to say, how it has to move, and all. But now we're trying to use large language models to sort of automate that process. And so yeah, it's being used in like so many different like industries. Like my hairdresser was telling me how they use AI and like keeping track of like everyone's information that they have from before, like their hair information. And like I used to always think of like hairdresser as the one job that's got like nothing to do with AI, but it absolutely does. So yeah, very interesting to see like how all different like careers are using it. But like I think right now I'm also, so my cousin's here and she was like starting her new job today. So I was telling her yesterday that I think now is the time to build domain expertise. If you're starting your careers now, like spend the next few years like trying to become like an expert in a domain, because as we go forward, like that's the thing that's going to have value, because AI is like really good at these high level tasks, but it doesn't truly have like one domain's deep expertise, right? So when you have that, like you're super valuable in your job. Long answer.
No, and I love it. I want to follow up. You mentioned currently in your job, you are utilizing AI and even teaching children AI. So obviously,
Yeah.
for those of us who weren't necessarily raised with AI, but we're
Yeah.
just kind of embracing it, tell us
Mhm.
about that process and how that works for children and anything we can learn as adults.
Yeah. So I've actually seen that children are a lot more, adept with these tools. They are a lot more okay to adopt new tools because yeah, they haven't seen a world that wasn't without these intelligent tools, right? They started with that. So I think they're really good at like picking up new skills. Like sometimes children tell me interesting ways of like using a tool that I hadn't even thought about. Like I was like working with this group of middle schoolers yesterday, and they taught me like a bunch of new features in Photoshop where you can use AI to like quickly generate. They were making these posters for their class, and they taught me like a bunch of AI features that I had like no idea even existed, right? So they, I think, explore so much more, very open to like checking out things. But I think children are also like so much more responsible. I just think they think very responsibly about our world. Like they're like, oh, do we need to use AI for that one? Or like they think about the environmental impact of AI. And like, they wouldn't just like very intentional about things. Like they wouldn't just be like using things for the fun of using things. So that's like really interesting to see. I do worry though that I think sometimes like children start to rely on these tools like a little bit too much, and they have this awareness too. Like they also worry about it. They go like, oh, it's like right there, so it's so easy to use it, to do like my homework. So I don't really want to think about it because like sometimes you have a deadline and you're tired and you don't want to do the annoying work. And then I think we were like, put through that time of like doing the annoying work, but they have an option. So sometimes it's also just like self-regulation of like getting yourself to like manually do some parts of it to be able to learn it. And I think like for me and like for folks around me, like there's sometimes I've seen resistance, like even I resist, like I don't want to put like AI in my email because I'm just like because if I lose track of my email, then I'll like never get back into knowing what's going on. So yeah, sometimes there's resistance, but I think it's also important to like think about where the resistance is sort of coming from, like what part of it is like the thing that I'm resisting to. And sometimes there's value in resisting technology as well. So yeah, that's how like I think about it. Professors around me, I've often noticed that they also have some resistance around AI because they think of like AI being used a lot for cheating, right? And I think there's like a valuable concern there in that they want students to like learn certain things, right? Like I want you to spend some time like thinking about these topics, like reading these papers, but you can also like simply upload it in AI and like get a response out of it. That I think we are in this transition period and people are adapting to it. So now people are thinking creatively about how do I design my assignments, right? So they are a little bit more not AI proof, but like AI enhanced, that people can use AI, but then they can like do so much more with it. So I just assume my students are going to be using these things, but now I expect a lot more out of them than what I was expecting from students 3 years ago, because they have all these amazing tools at their disposal. So they should be able to do a lot more complex assignments. So yeah, I think just the rate at which we are getting skilled is like very rapid right now. And I think that was always the case, right? So like when search engines came in, like when Google came in, the rate at which we could like retrieve knowledge just became so much more rapid. Like before that, you had to like go to a physical source and like an encyclopedia or library and find information. So imagine like how slow that was. So we already like upskilled so much in that era, like the .com era, and now we're like upskilling again. So yeah, just like what is going to be expected of you rapidly increases.
Exactly. I really love that AI enhance kind of quote. So then to you, Andres, how have you seen it apply in the projects you are currently, for example, developing in Singapore? How have you seen AI being applied?
I mean, now AI is used, I would say, almost everywhere. Like even for people creating, I don't know, recipes, asking AI what kind of combine different ingredients. In research is being very useful, especially for in robotics. In the past, people used to train the robot in the environment and things fail. Now they're doing a lot of simulations. And so they're basically online, they're doing a lot of testing before they go out into the real world. And AI is allowing them to avoid a lot of issues they would have with the hardware and, simulating the qualities of the environment, is different swimming than walking or going in a slippery surface. All these things that the roboticists are basically doing. That part of the project I'm currently focusing a lot. I'm in Singapore, and that's kind of in my head now. The project we have here is all about robots. A big team is in robots, but we have projects on AI, how it's influencing the human capital, how AI is influencing the workforce, but from the lens of augmenting, as Safina mentioned, augmenting the capacities in not replacing jobs. It's changing tasks. And the example that I give is very interesting because we're afraid that it's going to take jobs and, a lot of people are going to suffer, which is true. And governments should pay attention so they can upskill and reskill people. But we're worried that it will take away a lot of skills that we have. And we will feel like, okay, then I'm not a doctor anymore the way I used to be, right? Because it's doing a lot of things that I didn't do. Well, this is my example. I work in anesthesia in neuroscience when I was younger. You know what the best surgeon was before anesthesia? It was the fastest surgeon because you have four anesthesiologists, one for each limb to hold you, and you're fighting. Or they might give you some alcohol or hit you in the head, literally. That was the anesthesia. And they hold you because they need to cut your leg because you have some sort of disease, diabetes. They need to amputate your leg. The best surgeon before anesthesia was the fastest one. So there's less pain. Once we discovered anesthesia, the best surgeons became the ones that were more delicate and focused on the details. So the amputation would leave a good outcome. So what we call an expert before and after the tool, in this case anesthesia, changed it a lot. And I might say it's better now what we think is an expert surgeon than what it was in 1902. I think it was what? Late 1800s, early 1900s. So it's a little bit of that main mindset of some tasks are going to be taken over by this tool, as it has in the past, but new tasks will pop out, including humans in the equation, right? So augmenting the human capacities. That doesn't mean that we need to be aware because these technologies require us also to be critical of what they're doing, right? Not because we say they're doing it, it means they're doing it all the time properly. And Safina, you mentioned that the children sometimes rely too much on the tools. I will say everybody, like my father sent some messages to me that this is not true. Somebody is lying. This is just a fake image created by some sort of tool. Like as a society, we need AI literacy, not only children, grown-ups, adults, teenagers, everybody needs AI literacy. And the other thing is understanding not what is currently available, but understanding the capacity. So we don't need to train them every 6 months when a new tool pops out, right? It's more about opening the eyes that is basically out there creating a lot of information, and you need to reinforce more those human skills that you have, like critical thinking and become like a responsible use of the technology. Responsible user, I mean, of the technology. I don't know if I really answered your question, but yeah.
Yes, you did. It was quite an extreme example. But yes, we're in extreme change. So I really take it. On skills you just mentioned, let's dive deeper. What skills do you think do we need to focus on then now to develop, to stay relevant, to work effectively alongside AI technology?
I mean, I echo what Safina mentioned about becoming an expert in your field, becoming somebody that really knows some technical skills that are very important. But regardless of those technical skills, the ones that are harder to transfer to the AI are what people call human skills, professional skills, inappropriately called soft skills. And I think those are the hardest to grasp, not only by AI, but by humans. Like we spend a lot of time learning how to communicate. And even when we try to communicate our message, what we have in our head doesn't arrive to the receiver 100% of what we wanted it to be, right? Um, Personally experienced that a lot. So um, I think things like communication, working in teams, that gut feeling, again, I'm mentioning what I studied, that is implicit knowledge. That gut feeling sometimes is not really a gut feeling. It's a lot of knowledge that you have accrued over your life that is somehow expressing to you, don't do that. It's impossible to verbalize it, but somehow it knows. So there are all these skills that we collect as a collective, as a society we have, that we need to focus a little bit more. And that's why when people think about AI, we're thinking about isolation, social media, that people are staying in their phones. I think we could use these technologies as AI to bring people together, to go back to the classroom to learn, or go back to the park and play together. It doesn't mean that AI has to put you in isolation, but go back to the community and learn the skills that we used to learn as a community. I think that's an important element that we need to keep bringing back into the education system, both academically speaking and also outside. Like if you're talking about internships, apprenticeships, all of the skills you learn in an apprenticeship are most of the time not so much about technical skills, but how do you talk to your peers? How do you interact in a meeting? How do you respond to a negative comment? How do you take it the good way, positive, negative feedback? All these things that sound not so important, but actually define how you perform in your job more than the technical knowledge, because you can ask Google almost everything. You can ask Google, how do I interact with this human that has some conflict with me?
Absolutely. Safina, any other skills you will add?
Think I would add to like what Andre said with skills. Like I actually do think like getting like technical skills does make you like be able to have these conversations in an AI world. But I do think like what I call soft skills. Like creativity, I often think about is like such an important human skill to have because tools keep evolving, but to be able to use them in creative, interesting ways, like that's always going to be relevant. I think critical thinking is important. So with AI especially, like you want to check the sources of things, you want to critically evaluate where this tool should be used, should not be used. And I think you want to like always survive like hypes, right? Of what a tool is doing and what it's actually capable of. For that, like critical thinking is very important. Then I'd say curiosity is super important. So to keep learning, keep gaining new skills, we need this like perseverance, curiosity, like eagerness to learn, because I keep saying this, like tools will keep changing all the time. So yeah, I think having these very real human skills, empathy, again, super important.
Super key. Yes. And you mentioned earlier as well, discussing about the kids' curiosity, adaptability, flexibility, all of that is not going to be replaced by AI. But Kaden, we have a question by Kaden. What does being AI literate mean to you? Like, how do you start even learning about this? Where will you send us? Okay, after this call, I want to become an AI literate. Where I go?
Anders, you want to go first or should I go? Okay, I'll go first. Okay, so I think of this as like, three big sort of branches of being AI literate. Like one is you learn about how the AI works, right? Or like you learn how to make with AI. So that's called technical literacy. So that you want to do, like, if you want to be someone who wants to like make AI or make with AI. So all of that, there's like 1,000 courses, right? Where you can like get skilled in machine learning, like learn about data sets, learn about algorithms, learn about like different types of AI, like learn about generative AI, how to train them. Sometimes you don't even have to train them from scratch, so how to fine tune them, use them, etc. So technical literacy. The other is like application. So application very much depends on your domain. So what I do is like, let's say I make art, right? So I would like want to try to first figure out like what is the type of AI that is relevant to art making, that is making strides in art making. There already is going to be a bunch in every field, right? Like if I'm a doctor, like I'll see what kind of AI is like relevant to healthcare right now. And I learn about those. And this is a very applied AI. So I'm going to learn how to use those in healthcare applications. So I'll use those with like medical scans, for example, right? Or I use those for like understanding large scale health information, for example. So the second like sort of bucket I see is like applied AI, where you don't really like learn about all of like how this AI is made or learn to make AI, but you learn to like apply it to a specific domain. And then the last one that I think about is like the implications of AI, right? And I think that's a big part of AI literacy as well. So like how is it impacting the world around us? So I would study fields like AI and policy. So how's the government thinking about it? Like AI awareness. So what do people know? Then like ethical implications, like the bias in AI systems, how it's impacting our jobs, how it's impacting our economy. So paying attention to those things, the environmental impact of AI. Like I think super important for everyone to know about, and then also to like people to speak out about, right? So speak out about like policy in different places. So like Europe has a very different like set of policy guidelines than the US does, than like Asia does. So also thinking about these like nuances in different places and how that affects both like different industries, but then also like how that affects corporates, like companies coming out of it, that affects like how and what you can use in different places. So that I think of as like the societal implications of AI. Within that, I think a big topic right now is also misinformation and like, fake news that people often try to spread using generative AI. And as you said, right, like those generative videos, they're so like realistic. And they're so like rampant now on platforms like WhatsApp and Twitter, X, that people like have started to believe them now, right? Like people ask Grok for different information and like sometimes it's wrong. So yeah, also being aware of those things. Like I think that's part of AI literacy as well. So I see like these three big buckets.
Fantastic. Will you add anything, Andres, to this?
I had something, but it just kind of left. No, but I would say I completely agree with Safina about the technical knowledge. People might ask why. Why do we need to know how these models work? And I kind of compare that to the what we used to call digital literacy, like how to use Excel, how to use Word, how to use a browser, right? That technology, when you use it, sort of gives you the same result regardless of who is the user. Maybe there is a geolocation in the Google browser, right? But that's already AI. But before that, it was basically regardless who you are, where you are, what you say, what you ask, it's giving you sort of the same output, the same results. With the new AI, there's a lot of implications on because of how the algorithm is created, what data is used, and even what data you give it as an input, the output that is going to give you, the results are going to change a lot. And that affect can affect people's lives or government life, or it can create big difference. And you need to kind of understand why those differences happen. Now, to understand that is why you need to see the model under the hood. So if you are, I'm a Latino in the United States and I apply for a loan for my studies, an algorithm that is sort of biased towards Latinos in a negative way might give me a higher percentage for that money. So my loan will have a higher percentage. And that's not nice. it should be the same for almost everybody, regardless if I'm Latino or not. So the only way to change those things is to be aware of those. And when you apply or you are interacting with those tools, you need to sort of now understand that the algorithm has that kind of bias because it's trained with a specific type of data, blah, blah, blah. So just to make that difference between like regular digital literacy to the AI, because it's not giving the same response or results to everybody. It's being affected by how it was trained, but also who is interacting it with. And that's what we all as a society need to be aware of that, because once we realize these things are happening, we can raise our hand and say, hey, change that. Imagine a government that is making a policy decision, as Afina was saying, based on an algorithm, I don't know, face recognition on the streets for police, and they always make mistakes with somebody with a mustache. So everybody with a mustache is going to jail by default. I think people with mustaches will be really mad, right? So we need to understand what's happening, and then society can say people with mustaches have rights, and let's change the system. And that kind of societal awareness will only happen if AI literacy applies not only to the researchers in the field, but everybody, right? And all these tools are now not consumed only by the researchers and governments, but by everybody in general. So let's create a movement basically of being aware of these things so we can make them always be better.
Let's
I'm not
create
against people with mustache, just so you know.
let's create a movement then right here. We have so many questions and I'm really happy, not just here in the chat, also in Slido. I see loads of them. So Andres, I'm going to start with this one from Ben. You mentioned about how careers will adapt, such as those in the healthcare professional with your example. How do you see AI being applied to the more common jobs? And I think you are working on something like that as well in Singapore. So more common jobs like coffee shop, retail, hospitality, will those jobs adapt as well, or do you see them being replaced?
Everybody needs to adapt. So adaptation is a necessity, and that's why the human species has survived. So everybody needs to adapt. Now, it's gonna hit hard, but let me give you examples. In Japan, they try a hotel with a robot. I don't know if you've seen this one. These are like human-looking lady in one desk, and she kind of speaks sort of Japanese. And next to her, there is a robot that is, I don't remember the one, is the white one with the blue eyes, but it like a figure of a robot, like more of like a Japanese cartoon type of robot, like this big. The lady is regular size. And on the other side, there's a dinosaur, like a T-Rex, that is also a robot. And they work as a concierge where you can check in and do everything. People didn't respond to that experiment. It was weird. They didn't connect with the robot completely. So AI is the one feeding those robots to kind of behave like a human, but it's not really a human, right? So now imagine a robot serving coffee for you or interacting in a manner that is similar to what you mentioned about the coffee shops. I think that disconnect there is that people don't go only for, well, some people might go only for the coffee, but some people go for the interaction. And we're missing that in that specific job. One example I heard from a professor at Sloan, Tom Malone, I finally realized he was the one that gave this example, is doormen in a hotel. They open and close the door. You can replace that person with a sensor that opens and closes the door, right? Very easy, quick. Well, actually, people study that later and realize the doorman is not only opening and closing the door, it's the first face of the whole company, the whole hotel with the customer. Is the one that is saying hello, is greeting them, is picking up their luggage, is telling them where to go when they arrive, because it wasn't like easy to see the front desk. Is the person that when people outside are like maybe making noises, somebody's drunk, they kick them out and say, hey, keep the hotel looking nice and pristine. So there are tasks that will be replaced by the sensor opening and closing the doors. But AI is not, in this case, as a metaphor, as a comparison, how are you going to replace picking up the luggage, showing you where the directions are? If somebody comes out sick, where do you tell them how to go to the pharmacy? If somebody's kind of falling, you will hold them and helping them. So, there are skills of the job of maybe a coffee clerk that will be taken over by AI and a robot, maybe taking the order, things like this. But there are other tasks and skills that still are necessary. So, we're replacing some. And in the example of the surgeon, it's just changing. Now, this tasks or activities that people see as low level, like the coffee person, we also might need as a society to rethink them because the human skills to me are the most praised. Like CEOs are not in their position because of their technical skills specifically, their strategy. They get everybody excited. They know how to communicate their plan. And those all of these are not technical skills, they're human skills. So maybe people that serve in a cafe in the future when all the technical skills are covered will be the most expensive, we will pay them the most because you will be able to interact with a human, which we will be not having a lot because there will be robots doing the other stuff. So, it's maybe a reframing and rethinking of how we as a society value human interaction.
Thank you. I'm seeing comments around people perhaps using AI as a personal psychotherapist. A lot of people, I also know, even a lot of people in my family, like they feel that openness to go and share. And someone is saying potentially AI is becoming the most well-informed psychotherapist they have ever seen. And someone else is also saying we are using it on daily basis. Is there a risk that at some point we won't be able to move forward without AI? Is there a way back, Safina? It's like, this is Google. Now we have internet. Can we go back and just not have AI?
Yeah. Um, I want to acknowledge a psychotherapist comment first, and then if there's a way back, right? Yeah, I actually think so many people are using AI for therapy right now. And I think it's I think it's a good thing, because it's made like therapy accessible, first of all. I think it's a big reflection back to like human society about how really good things like having access to good therapy was not accessible for like most people so far. And like tools like AI make it available to all people. But I think the risk here is like we know that it's not perfect, right? And like there's a lot of like limitations with AI as a psychotherapist. Like it fully doesn't understand the context you're coming from. It wouldn't know to ask like all the relevant questions. Sometimes it would validate some bad decisions. And there's been evidence of this, of like AI making bad therapy decisions. But I think bigger than all of that, like human therapists aren't perfect either, right? Like they make mistakes all the time too. Like I think we as professionals in general, like make human errors all the time, but there's accountability in us making errors. There is very little accountability in like AI making an error. And I think in things like, therapy, an error is not a clear error, right? Like in a self-driving car, an error is a clear error when a rule is violated, but there it's like so subjective. So I think there's that little bit that like concerns me, and it's a hard question, right? Like on one hand it's making this accessible, like helping so many people, right? Like solve very real problems. Like so many people have been able to figure out like even their not condone, like not recommending this to anyone, but like people have figured out their diagnosis using AI tools, and then like they went to a real doctor and like that helped them kind of like get up to speed with what sort of things they should be taking. And there's nice that there's that one like, doctor level like protection in between right now, but that's here, right? That's in the Western world. That doesn't exist in like a lot of other worlds where you can like even get prescription yourself, right? So in those situations, it does bother me a little bit that regulation isn't strong enough right now. That as a tool, there's like no doubt that it's powerful, it's useful. I do see some risks, like, AI companies are still very centrally controlled, and it's very like, corporate driven. Like it's not like a government or like the medical agency that's like behind all of this. It's like one tech company, and this is not their domain of expertise. They've just like straight up trained on that data, right? So think of it this way, like if there are errors in the data, there are limitations in the data, if someone wants to manipulate that data, like it's very open to all of those risks. Like our AI models today, like they have political inclinations, they have ethical and moral inclinations. And these inclinations can be changed at any point in the back without people even knowing, right? So then they could impact like a whole society's moral and ethical implication. And that's like really risky. So there are all these risks, but like I want to go back to like what Andre said is like the number one way to like mitigate these is like AI awareness, like knowing about how these tools work, what they can be best used for, but also how they are sort of limited. So always taking it with a grain of salt, right? So I think that's super important. And like coming back to your question, Joanna, about like, is there a way back? I think like, with like most technologies, once the cat is out of the bag, like it's out there. So I don't see it ever like us ever not like, fully sort of like canceling AI, so to say. There are people who resist the use. There are a lot of people who like just don't use it. And I think that's totally fine. People have now started to make like social media apps that are like AI free. There are there's this like AI free cafe that I went to the other day where like you just can't use any AI tools. So people are also embracing like that side of like, I want to be in a world where this isn't like all around me because it's too much, right? You're like constantly being told AI this, AI that. So there are spaces you can exist in like without using these tools. And I think it is especially easier to exist there if you have some sort of like, domain expertise, as I spoke about. Like, if you're like a really excellent barista already, then you probably don't need to use AI in your work. You don't need to, like, you can use it to gain even more knowledge, even more skill, but you absolutely don't have to in that space. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's like a whole like way backward, but I do think that the more and more we rely on tools, we ourselves will like, create this like importance for getting our own skills, our own knowledge. So I think of it this way, right? Like if you think about gyms, right? Like for gyms where you like lift and all, actually gyms are a pretty like dystopian concept, right? Because like we're just going there and we're lifting weights to like do nothing, right? Like the weights don't actually do anything. Like back in the day, we used to be like really physically strong as like a human race, and then we didn't need to be because we created all these like machines, etc., that would do the manual work for us. And then we realized that, oh, but like our bodies are losing the strength. So we created this thing called a gym where we just like go and lift weights, right? So if like someone from the past would be looking at us just like lifting heavy things for no purpose, they'd be like, what is this insanity? So I often think of like, are there going to be like mental gyms in the future, right? Now that like we're outsourcing so much of our mental work to AI, like are we going to go to a space and like do thinking? It's just like a thought experiment.
Yeah, so
I have one comment um, regarding what Safina was mentioning of being aware. And people that know me almost always roll their eyes when I say this, but when you think about AI, think about the data. So when you use it, think what data you're giving it, because that data is basically power over whoever owns that tool. Call it a free app. Nothing is free. Somebody needs to pay for the app. Somebody needs to pay for the engineer. Somebody needs to pay for the cloud where that thing is running. It's not free. So the data the data represents you. You are the product. It's not to say that's bad because those companies need to pay for all those services, but be aware of that. So when you give the data, be aware just be careful what you are giving away. In the therapies, there are some instances if something is free and everything, you might be giving too much information to a tool that is not properly taking care of your medical records, because those can be then later leaked and used by third parties, and that might affect your life, right? Imagine a woman that doesn't want anybody to know that she's pregnant, or things like that. Or imagine there's this 23andMe, the company that used to run the gene test and can tell you your gene profile. Well, there was an issue with them because they have a record of your gene profile, and that company is bankrupt, and now they're selling the data to get some money back. So a third party is going to own that data. But if that third party is your insurance company, now they know your gene history, your possibilities of getting sick for a specific disease, and then they decide to not give you coverage for that disease that based on your information you will actually have 20 years from now. So there's negative consequences when you provide that data. So just be aware, and maybe mentally you'll need to do a lot of exercises because it's hard to think what kind of data will be used in the future. We are now even in this era, it's called neuroethics, when we're starting to create policy on how we will codify the data that you extract from electroencephalography or any brain signals. Because maybe in the future, we still don't know, but maybe AI will be able to translate those electrical patterns into your thoughts, maybe what you were thinking. So later people can basically read your mind literally, which is not happening now, but given the technology and who knows. So now they're starting to create these kind of policies to avoid people or companies to have access to your future thoughts, sort of speaking. So yeah, just be cognizant when you're giving your data, who is receiving it, and what is the worst scenario, what they could use that for, and pause. And if you're okay with that, just send it. That's fine.
Exactly. Well, thank you for that comment because that also addresses quite a few questions or comments we had around the ethical use of AI or how to use it. I want to go back to Farhan. Farhan asked a question about the skills. So he says, how to use AI to develop my skills? Can AI identify my skill gaps and provide optimal solutions? And if so, how to use it responsibly and ethically? Safina.
Okay, so understanding like skill gaps, yeah, totally. I think very domain dependent. So I think in some domains, like demonstrating your skill is a little bit easier. So for example, if you're learning, right, like let's say you're learning about a new language, that's a skill, and then you can like, yeah, you can practice with AI, and it very quickly will identify what are your skill gaps in language. You can like set it up to figure out about your skill gaps. But let's say you're someone who's doing building, right? That's like a very physical skill. Our vision tools are like they're good, but they're not like as good right now to be able to identify every small like physical skill gap that you're going to have. So your first step should be like, what are the skills that you're trying to pick up, and how good will AI actually be in like identifying the skill gaps? Then you can like, yeah, practice with one of these like, off the shelf AI. Like there's a bunch of good ones. There's like ChatGPT, there's Gemini, there's Anthropic, and then trying to get to like first levels of skill gaps that you have. What I find really helpful is like seeing skill progression. So you have skill gaps and you go develop it, or you even like you can even practice with AI. Something like language learning, it's like super helpful with. I think language learning are actually a great one to start with. Just like pick up a new language and start learning that with AI, because you learn so much about AI through that, and you'll also learn a new language. And then you can see like how you're progressing through time. So it gives me a really good like, oh, you're like picking up grammar really quickly, but like you have trouble picking up complex vocabulary. So for something like that, it's helpful. How to ethically, wait, what was the second question? How to ethically use AI? I forgot. That's
Let me go back up. If so, how to use it responsibly and ethically?
Yeah. So as I said, like, be very mindful about what data set you're putting in. Andre said that, totally stealing his thought. Yeah, so think about like what data set you're putting in. Is it okay? Like, sometimes people, there are all these cases of like lawyers and doctors putting in like other people's data and information in there that they were totally not authorized to put in. So also like checking the legality of things. Like thinking about also not just what data you're putting in, but also what data it's trained on. So a lot of the times AI does super badly at like nuanced data sets. I was having some students like, create artwork from South Korea, and they were having a lot of trouble like getting some of their types of art being represented because it was just not represented in the data set. So data sets are very Western, very global North. So thinking about those limitations as well. I often like tend to also like, think about, do I really need to use AI? Like I think about environmental impact a lot these days, and like it's pretty harmful. Like, just like using AI for 1 year, like burns the emissions of like using a car continuously for, I'm forgetting the exact number, but it was like 40 years or something. So it's pretty bad in terms of environmental impacts. Also thinking about like, do you actually really need to? Like some things I think people can just Google, but they choose to use ChatGPT for. So I think also like not being very unnecessary about it. Like protecting vulnerable people around you. So I know like most people on this call are like, young professionals, but then you have old people in your life, you have kids in your life. So making sure that, you're not putting like a kid's picture into one of these AI engines. They're not putting in like someone's private information into this. Knowing that data leaks happen, they happen quite frequently. Recently, in fact, ChatGPT, like OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, like very publicly went and said that please stop putting in, personal information and legal information in there. Like people were also like, they've sometimes like committed a crime or something and they would like tell ChatGPT about it. And right now they like, there are the rules around it are very weak. Like we don't even know if they need to report or not. They don't even know if they need to report or not. So yeah, being like, very mindful of these things. Like this truly isn't like you working on incognito mode on your computer. Like this really is a public data set that you're using. Yeah, and then also like, thinking about your own goals. Like sometimes you can use it for like doing your work, and you can use it for doing your homework and like things that is making you more efficient. But then also think about your own learning, right? Like sometimes if you use it to the extent of it being detrimental to your learning, then thinking in your own self-interest, right? Like be selfish about being knowledgeable. like gaining knowledge. Your goal is not to finish the assignment, like pass your exam. Like you're gonna do that regardless. Like people have done that for ages, but your goal is to become more upskill, become more knowledgeable, like sound smarter at parties, right? Like that should be the goal. So yeah, become selfish in your knowledge gaining.
Thank you, Safina. Another question I'd like to ask Andres. So, as a as careers professionals supporting students, so not only we have here young professionals, but also career professionals that support students with AI. What's the best advice I can provide?
I think when you get to know the people you're working with, that's the real career advice. We're talking about AI. We're talking about how to augment your capacity. So let's start from your capacities, right, and not the augmentation. I imagine as a career advice professional, I would keep focusing on the human being that is asking you to give them advice. And the tools and whatever is available is in second place. It might help you to be more efficient and save time. But it seems your focus, at least I believe, your focus should still be on the human being that is in front of you, that is seeking help and support. Now, if we're thinking about how you support that person in the context of AI, maybe feeling their feeling is taking over their jobs or that they need to upskill. I think we said a lot of things that could be useful for them. Basically, AI literacy for everybody, everywhere, all the time. So go and do that. And as Safina mentioned, uh, stay on touch of whatever AI resources are useful in your specific domain. So you are actually very competitive because in the future, they won't hire you because you're a great graphic designer. They will hire you because you're a great graphic designer that knows how to use AI for that task, right? Um, so I would think that's kind of the combination, but I will go back to the human aspect because that's something that we should not forget. AI has been for decades. Now Gen AI is sort of recent, but we've been using AI for a long time. And we still should focus on the human behind that because that's the real element that, at least for now, has value until we have the sentient AI, and we'll be maybe looking for jobs for a sentient AI, but some decades for that.
Exactly. And I think when we started this conversation, there was something that you mentioned, Safina, about, okay, am I resistant or scared to use AI? Preparing for this, I was also chatting with colleagues, with friends, and I see a lot of like people are either scared or confused or even wondering. I have a friend who is a writer, and she's like, am I cheating if I'm getting some help from AI? I don't know, like all these questions that everybody's asking for. I would like to maybe, as a way of starting to wrap up this
Yeah.
conversation, is in our daily lives, and what will be like the best way to start integrating this as opposed to just resist it, but integrate it into our daily lives, into our work. What will you say, Safina?
Wait, what is the question? Sorry, I don't understand. Like,
The best way for us to start integrating, in your opinion, AI without, let's say, fear, but overcoming the fear and actually just start embracing it.
yeah, I think, like for a lot of you, I would say, like, decide for yourself. Like, you're all like wise, think about like what your values are. Like, sometimes your values are to be very efficient at work, right? Like to do something really quickly. Yeah, in that place, like start to use AI tools, like start with the off the shelf ones, and then you yourself will like learn to go deeper and like learn to make custom boards, and things like that. But then also, yeah, think about like there are places where you actually value the human skill and you don't want to use like AI for that. Like some people really enjoy writing, right? Like I really like writing emails back to my students. So I just don't want to use AI. So I think about like what do you value and don't take away from things you value. Like I really like hand painting, right? So I don't want to use AI for something like that. But I totally like value someone else using AI for that, and like they're making interesting, cool work also. So also, being open to other people's approaches, but then deciding for yourself, like where you want to lie within the spectrum and like how you want to start using these tools. Maybe also thinking about like how it's impacting people around you. Like, if a tool is like especially biased against a certain group, then yeah, resisting that. Like, I think that totally needs to be resisted. And it has been like, I think we as humans are pretty good at like resisting bad technology and like speaking out about it. So like, create content, like educate people around you, like talk to your parents, like talk to your younger siblings, things like that. Yeah.
How about you, Andres? You are on mute.
Yeah, I
I
was
needed
testing
to
everybody.
say it. Thank you. I needed to say it in a call. If you don't say that in a call, you weren't in a virtual call. Come on, you are
I'm
unmuted.
actually not muted. I'm
I
actually
know.
not muted. I'm just moving my mouth without making
Brains
sound.
muted.
Um, I would say that being or not comfortable with the technology is a very personal element, as Safina was mentioning. Unfortunately, society is having a minimum requirements now to kind of function. Like it's really hard to be employed if you don't have an email, right? Or if you don't know how to use the technology. So be cognizant of the needs that the job market is having. Try to stay, you know, updated to what is happening, as Safina mentioned at the beginning. That be curious about it. It's something that can be used for bad, but also can be used for good. So it's good to be aware of what's happening. AI literacy for all, I think that's very important. So I'm kind of just repeating what Safina mentioned. Is to me that would be one of the key elements. Is and double checking your specific area field, how it is impacting people, because sometimes we hear, we told you about the carbon footprint and all of these different elements, but in specific fields, it has more or less impact for some specific communities. So also try to be informed about that and ask questions. It's very easy when, especially we're talking about education, out there thinking about using some AI in the classroom. Teachers and parents ask questions, right? Because they care. So they say, wait, what is this doing? What is it for? Why do we want this? Is this really bringing the value? Or we just in this fab of AI and we just putting it there because that's the new thing? So maybe in your field of work, question what these technologies are coming. And as Safina mentioned, it's not only about the pleasure of writing and painting, it's also sometimes we bring tools that are not necessary. Like a hammer is still the best tool to put a nail. If you create some sort of weird app to put nails on the wall, that won't work. So sometimes the old fashioned is also nice. So maybe be open to that. Do we really need this? Do we really need to spend all this money all this time? Also, we need to learn to use the tool. The only element that will leave is when you're talking to these big LLMs, don't say thanks and please, because those expend also a lot of energy that ended up being more carbon footprint. So even that meaning changing behavior can help a lot. Um, so yeah, but I would think I will go back to that. Like be more critical about the technologies, use them when it's needed, but also sometimes just go for a walk when it's not needed.
Exactly. It's really great. Yeah, we don't have to use it for absolutely everything all the time. That's really good advice. And as we have reached the end of the event, I think this was absolutely super inspirational. We didn't even get to cover all the questions, and so we might need a part two at some point in the future. But thank you both, Safina, Andres, everyone who's been here.